Welcome to Innovation City, a podcast featuring the innovators, disruptors, and creators who are making things happen. And if you've been listening the past couple weeks, we've been giving you some of the best highlights from this past year, this past season of the Innovation City podcast. And we've been sharing with you some of the most inspirational and helpful people that we've come across in the Venture Cafe community. And to wrap up the year, we're going to talk about facing your fears. So if anybody has ever started a new thing, had a dream, started a business, or maybe you're even thinking about doing that, and there's something keeping you from trying it, usually that's fear. Fear of the unknown, fear of financial ruin, fear of whatever it is. And the guests we've had on Innovation City are no stranger to that feeling. In fact, most of them have actually talked about it, given some amazing advice that can help you push through those fears and take the next step to whatever it is that you want to accomplish. So we're going to start with Adam Hoffman. Adam is the CEO of Custodian. Adam talks about all the benefits of being an entrepreneur, even if you fail.
Well, I love how you think about business just in terms of if it doesn't work out, it's a learning experience. Tell me about that.
Yeah, I think that now when I go back and speak to some of the students at my university, who I'm only like 2 or 3 years older than, I think the biggest difference between us is we conceptualize of risk totally differently. And so when my friends were graduating from university and they were applying to a multitude of jobs and trying to lock in a steady paycheck, I think I was lucky enough to get a needs-based scholarship from WashU. And so I didn't graduate with an overwhelming amount of debt. I think that's important to acknowledge. But for folks that aren't in a significant financial hole, to me, there's no downside to pursuing an entrepreneurial path, because once you accept the premise, the learning curve for anything you do, to become great at anything, it doesn't matter, is going to be difficult and challenging and steep, then why not jump in with 2 feet? And so either your business fails and I'm doing air quotes, and it disappears, and maybe you spend 6 months on an idea that doesn't pan out. Well, you've learned how to review financial documents and create statements. You've learned how to draft contracts. You're now you're a paralegal for yourself. You've learned how to negotiate and do sales and do research. And even if you don't even get to the sales part, at the very least, you've learned how to advocate for yourself and gamble on yourself. And I think so many people operate through a paradigm of fear of really going for what they want, fear of doubling down on themselves, that to take the leap even once, it will make you more successful at anything you choose to do next, whether it's go to grad school or re-enter the main corporate path.
So for somebody that has gone through that experience and maybe, it was maybe not the best experience for them, or they're going through a little rough patch right now, what would be your advice for them?
I think 2 things. The first is, what I've learned over the last couple of years is, even in the best times, when it feels like we're on the upswing, stuff is still going wrong left and right, so things may actually be going way better than you think. You might just really be in the weeds and it's never going to feel easy. That doesn't mean it's not worth it. But I think the other thing is that now that I've hired people and interviewed people, now I really know what stands out to me in a prospective employee. And it is not what I was told in school, and it's not what I thought when I was younger. To me, it really comes down to, does this person work hard? Do they show up? Are they willing to put in the sweat equity to make something happen? And when they hit a challenge or they hit a problem, do they do everything they can to solve it? Maybe they can't solve it. There are tons of problems I can't solve. But do they get creative and do they not quit? And so if you're in a tough spot right now and your venture is not going the way you want, doesn't matter if you end up solving this problem or not. The fact that you're willing to put your nose to the grindstone, that you're trying to work through it, that you've been willing to go to battle on your own behalf, whatever you try to do next, this is a huge feather in your cap, and it will only make you more successful.
Next up, we have Junior Laura. He is the host of the Authentico podcast. Let's say there's somebody else in a position similar to you, and they want to try something. They've got a message they want to get out. What's your advice to them?
I love that question. So something that I was telling you guys before we started recording was how I felt before I walked in today. So I listened to your podcast and I said, oh my gosh, we have these folks here with PhDs, and we've got, you guys have these people who have, so much pull and have managed thousands of dollars worth of businesses. And I'm like, who am I to come in and be part of this podcast, to tell my story? What have I done? So to answer your question, my message is push through. That negative talk is going to keep you from getting a lot done. But the more that you push beyond it, the more that you grow, and the more that you develop, and you keep focusing on what your main goal is, go and run with it, and don't be shy. We each have a part to play, and I see this as me playing my part.
Next up, we have Lisa Hu. She is the founder of Lux and Nix.
Who knew once my MBA was done, I was like, no, I want to start my own business. And, I was like, what better time to do it than now? Because, then as time goes and as you go down that corporate path, I feel like sometimes you tend to give yourself more and more excuse of, okay, this is why I'm not pursuing my idea. This is why I'm, whether it's from a monetary standpoint, whether it's family, whether it's whatever else. And so I just said, well, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it now. I'm going to give myself a year, and that's why I started documenting it. And then I'll decide after a year.
What was the toughest part of that transition, like from the corporate to being an entrepreneur?
Quitting my job.
Yeah.
I would say that was the hardest part because, you just up until that point, you run all these scenarios in your head, like what if I fail? What if, I'm leaving this really great job? I'm disappointing so many different people. I'm disappointing my boss. I'm disappointing my family. I'm disappointing everybody around me. And, all that kind of, it weighs on you even up till the point of me sitting down with my boss and saying, hey, boss, I'm thinking about leaving and I want to start my own company. And then telling him, he was like, okay, what are you going to do? I'm like, I want to make handbags. Mm-hmm. And he was like, you have no background in fashion and, you have such a great trajectory here. Like, this is not, just going through the motion of doing that was challenging because that you knew that at that point that was a pivotal moment, that was a life transition, and I didn't know what was going to happen from there on. So I think the fear of the unknown made that very challenging.
What I really want to know is like the mindset behind saying, because what you've said is like, this is going to work, therefore I'm going to do X.
I would say I didn't know if it was going to work. More so than it was more, how you hit a certain point where you're like, okay, do I want to explore something that's potentially my passion? Because what I realized, when I had this idea was I kept thinking about it. I realized I always had different ideas, but this time it was like I just kept thinking about it, and didn't stop. And at that point, I was like, okay, well, either I do this, take a risk, and worst case scenario, I have my MBA, I have my background, I'll go back. Best case scenario, I make a business out of it. I guess like life is short, and if you don't take the chances, you'll never know. And maybe one day we'll wake up and regret not doing what we initially intended to do.
Finally, we have Alejandro Cornejo. He is a leadership development training facilitator. Let's hear from Alejandro.
Is that doing something that you love kind of the secret to having the willpower to push through, or do some people have it and some people don't?
I believe that it is, but you have to be able to have something even when your surroundings or whatever you're in doesn't look like it. And I think this is a concept probably of faith, even if you go on a spiritual level, but just in the fact that, for example, if you have this dream, and that's what I share. Yesterday, I was talking to international kids that were like me, kids that have been in the United States and St. Louis for a year or less, still learning the language and culture. But it's understanding, what do you want? Because sometimes we're not asked that question. Even when you're a kid, it's what does the culture want? What do your parents want? What do the teachers want? What does your brother want? What does everybody else want but you?
Yeah.
And if you're not driven by something you want, because people do what they want to do,
yeah,
right? But I believe it's tuning into that and then making it productive, because it works both ways. You could do what you want to do and be very unproductive, you know what I mean, with your life. But it's understanding and having that mental exercise. And then from there, you can begin that path. But I believe that what you're saying is if there's something that's motivating me, then whatever situation I'm in, I got to find where in this job or situation can I get that piece that I'm trying to develop right now. Many times we get discouraged because it's hard. I mean, I think that's the reality. And sometimes we don't think about the obstacles. And that's one of the aspects of goal setting that is very important that, again, I learned later is understanding what are the obstacles? What's going to get in the way? Because sometimes I'm kind of like this natural dreamer and I'm going to do this. But what I learned was you also from, for like somebody like my brother, who's a very analytical data scientist type of person, that would say, well, what's going to get in the way of that? So then you can anticipate and then make plans to deal with it because you will have resistance, right? Gravity never takes a day off. So you're always going to have resistance. But if that passion is strong and you're developing and you're soaking in it, but that's the thing, right? Is that's something that you have to be marinating in all the time. And hopefully, again, it's something you've thought about and something that's important to you. And if you look at people, if you read books and biographies, people who are really successful, this podcast is successful because I'm sure you guys are into this, right? You're just not doing it because you have to. It's you probably would do it even if you weren't getting paid to do it, right? So I think those are the keys, right? Is finding where's that passion or excitement for me that's going to be that driver, because if you don't have it, you're going to be in trouble. The thing worth doing is hard. Right? And so many times, and as we'll probably get into, when we think about leadership development, the biggest enemy is typically our own mindset. And so many times, what he said is how many times do dreams end because we just don't even think of them? Or when we think of them, we immediately sabotage them or abort them. And then the dream can never happen because you ended it right away.
For more episodes, visit innovationcity.co. Be sure to subscribe, rate, and review. And if you're in St. Louis, visit us on a Thursday night. Details at vincafstl.org. And connect with us on social at We Are Slam or at Venture Cafe STL. Thanks for listening.
This is where it all begins, so say goodbye to all your fears, all your doubts. This is where they die. This is where we